21 black celebrities who had final photos that made fans cry. There are photographs that lie. To the untrained eye, they capture a picture-perfect family, an ordinary smile, or a dazzling stage light frozen in time. But look closer and you might sense the chilling speculation hidden within the frame. These aren't just memories, they are countdowns. The very last time a powerhouse icon drew breath before the sudden drop into an inescapable tragedy. The heartbreak doesn't stem merely from the death itself, but the earth-shattering secret that fate was already standing right beside them. Today we tear down the golden illusion to reveal the raw agony behind the final haunting photos of 21 black celebrities. Images that shattered the world one heartbeat at a time. Bob Marley. Numbers never lie, and in the case of the global reggae icon, they charted a devastating countdown to oblivion. It started with a single digit. 1. One small dark spot under his toenail in 1977, easily dismissed, but it was a silent predator waiting to strike. By 1980, the statistics of his survival were plummeting. He spent 8 grueling months at a clinic in Germany, enduring a barrage of radical treatments, ozone therapy, oxygenated blood transfusions, autologous vaccines, none of which could stop the merciless foe ravaging his cells. Then came April 28, 1981, the date of his final photograph. The metrics of his physical decline were terrifying to witness. He weighed a mere 35 kilograms. His face was severely sunken, his trademark dreadlocks stripped away, leaving a man who was literally wasting away before the lens. It was skin over bones, a frail frame barely holding on. Yet, if you look into his eyes in that picture, there is a statistical anomaly, a pure, unbroken spirit staring down the inevitable. Despite burning through immense medical bills and losing his entire touring income, his only remaining equation was to make it back to Jamaica. On May 11, 1981, a private flight was chartered. He was 36 years old. Over 4,700 miles separated him from the land he belonged to. But his failing organs had a different timeline, forcing an emergency landing in Miami, where his vital signs finally hit zero. What is the true mathematical value of preaching universal peace when your own biology ruthlessly subtracts your life? That quiet collapse of a steady reggae heartbeat slowly faded into an eerie silence, a void eventually filled by the heavy, chaotic brass of another musical titan whose final glamorous curtain call masked a mountain of secret ruin. James Brown. On December 28, 2006, the godfather of soul lay completely motionless inside a blindingly radiant gold-plated casket at the Apollo Theater. Clad in a striking blue suit with immaculate hair and flawless makeup, it was a picture-perfect farewell for a king. But this forgiving spotlight was the ultimate golden illusion. Rewind just a few days and the man who made the entire world dance was gasping for air, his lungs drowning in severe fluid retention. At 73, decades of a grueling schedule and substance use had forged a merciless foe within his body. Despite battling prostate cancer and diabetes, he forced himself to hand out Christmas gifts to underprivileged children, a desperate survival strategy to maintain his towering legacy. Yet, when his heart finally gave out in the early hours of Christmas Day, the sudden drop into darkness was devastating. He wasn't surrounded by the thousands of fans who would later weep at his viewing. He died in the cold, raw agony of isolation, with only his personal manager in the room. The fame's crushing pressure had hollowed him out. Behind the facade of a multi-million-dollar empire lay an earth-shattering secret. Mountains of debt, vicious property disputes, and a bank account practically drained of cash. The loudest, most electrifying performers often leave behind the quietest, most agonizing voids when the curtain falls forever. That exact same devastating paradox, smiling radiantly for the public while a malignant force secretly shreds your insides, would soon claim another cultural titan, a real-life champion who quietly bled behind an indestructible armor. Chadwick Boseman. On April 15, 2020, a final video appeared on his Instagram feed. It was intended as a moment of triumph, announcing a massive $4.2 million donation to hospitals serving Black communities during the pandemic. On the surface, it was a picture-perfect display of heroism from a global icon. But the internet quickly became a ruthless tabloid fodder battleground, with confused viewers leaving harsh comments about his extreme weight loss. The public, wielding an unforgiving systemic blade, judged a man who was secretly fighting an invisible enemy. Since 2016, stage 3 colorectal cancer had been his silent predator. Behind the golden illusion of blockbuster action sequences and an indestructible superhero suit, he was enduring years of grueling chemotherapy and multiple surgeries. In that final charity video, the raw agony leaked through the digital screen. His cheeks were deeply sunken, his shrunken frame was swallowed by oversized clothes, and his usually commanding voice faltered. He was practically skin over bones, forced to use a cane off camera to move around, yet his bright eyes remained fiercely determined. On August 28, 2020, his 43-year-old body finally surrendered at his Los Angeles home. The earth-shattering news left the entire world completely stunned. Millions can adore your digital avatar and praise your legacy, yet the public actually knows absolutely nothing about the devastating personal hell their idols endure in private. Sometimes, however, the fatal blow isn't a quietly guarded internal disease, but a deafening explosion of external chaos, where a rising trajectory is violently permanently grounded on cold, blood-stained concrete. King Von. Look closely at the thick, jagged stitches running across the motionless chest under the harsh fluorescent lights of a medical examiner's room. This leaked autopsy photo, which surfaced on November 9, 2020, instantly became horrific tabloid fodder. Just days prior, the 26-year-old rising star of Chicago drill was captured laughing loudly among friends, radiating the energy of someone who had successfully beaten the odds. But that golden illusion of sudden wealth and fame could not sever him from his dangerous roots. The systemic blade of his environment, the raw street violence so deeply woven into his authentic lyrics, was an invisible punishment shadowing his every step. On the night of November 6th, outside an Atlanta hookah lounge, a seemingly basic argument ignited. The sudden drop took mere seconds. Sharp gunshots shattered the quiet night, and his picture-perfect rise violently collapsed onto cold concrete as bullets tore through his body. The stitched, lifeless skin on that metal table stood as a cold, undeniable truth. A multi-million-dollar record deal is never a bulletproof vest. Yet, a devastating demise isn't always born from the fiery chaos of the streets. Sometimes cruel destiny pulls the string from thousands of feet in the air, plunging an unstoppable talent straight into the freezing, breathless grip of nature. Otis Reading. If you had stood with us on that small rocking boat on Lake Monona after 72 agonizing hours, the biting wind howling across the pitch-black water would have frozen your soul. We were just recovery workers, leaning over the icy edge, struggling to pull up a body made impossibly heavy by the freezing depths. This wasn't just any man, this was the King of Soul, a voice that moved an entire generation. Just days earlier, he was bathing in the warmth of dazzling stage lights, his packed schedule and overflowing wealth creating a picture-perfect trajectory. But that golden illusion violently shattered when his plane plunged into the icy water at a 35-degree angle. As we hoisted him up, the raw agony of the scene was overwhelming. He lay completely motionless among the harsh sounds of knocking ice chunks, his seatbelt still strapped across his soaked dark clothes, his expression completely frozen. The sudden drop from the pinnacle of the music world to this desolate tomb felt like a chilling speculation on the fragility of greatness. His majestic stage lights were permanently drowned out beneath the murky ice. While nature's freezing grip can extinguish a blazing star in an instant, a completely different kind of terror unfolds when a genius is forced to watch their own body slowly betray them from within a sterile, clinical cage, turning every hard-earned breath into an agonizing mechanical rhythm. Jay Dilla. On December 16, 2005, during a tour in Europe, an oversized baseball cap shadowed his deeply sunken eyes, and a massive jacket swallowed his skeletal frame. He was confined to a wheelchair on stage, a jarring image that completely shattered the golden illusion of a powerful hip-hop pioneer. The stark metric of his decline wasn't measured in album sales, but in the relentless progression of lupus and TTP, silent predators rapidly eating away his vitality. The sudden drop accelerated with cruel efficiency. The hospital in Los Angeles became a sterile prison. A man whose very essence was defined by producing groundbreaking rhythms was now forced to measure his life in labored breathing and the painful stillness of aching joints. Yet, the raw agony of his physical decay contrasted violently with an indestructible creative spirit. His MPC and mixer were hauled into his hospital room, turning a clinical space of impending death into a sanctuary of creation. There, lying flat and unable to move, he produced his legendary final album, Donuts. The mathematical equation of his life zeroed out at just 32 years old on February 10, 2006, days after the album's release, leaving behind a profound legacy carved from pure physical torment. A body hollowed out by disease often finds refuge in art, but an entirely different tragedy unfolds when a monumental career forces an icon into the lonely depths of addiction, leading to a solitary ride toward an irreversible end. Prince. The cold, metallic walls of a Paisley Park elevator served as the final, claustrophobic resting place for a musical titan who once commanded boundless, screaming stadiums. On April 21, 2016, Prince was discovered lifeless, ultimately felled by a fatal fentanyl overdose. This sudden drop was the violent culmination of a merciless foe, severe hip and spine deterioration from decades of dynamic performing. These heavy painkillers, initially adopted as a necessary survival strategy, mutated into an invisible enemy. Rewind exactly 5 days, and a tragically fragile golden illusion emerges. In his last photograph, Prince slowly pedals a silver bicycle alone across his massive estate. Dressed in simple black clothing, his once vibrant figure appears startlingly small, his posture dangerously unsteady. The pills temporarily masked the raw agony, granting him one last peaceful afternoon ride in the sun. Yet, his secretive midnight pharmacy visits and isolated recording sessions exposed the grim reality of a king imprisoned by his own failing body. Time reclaims all brilliance, proving that even the most ethereal souls are tethered to breaking bones. A majestic crown offers no buoyancy whatsoever when the devastating undertow of addiction silently drags a sovereign down into the suffocating, tragic depths of an opulent hotel bathtub. Whitney Houston. The golden illusion of a dazzling musical queen was fully restored for the cameras on February 17, 2012. Lying in an open casket during a private viewing, she was adorned in a striking purple dress, perfectly matched gold slippers and sparkling jewelry. Her flawlessly applied makeup crafted a picture-perfect, peaceful final image. But this was merely highly orchestrated tabloid fodder. The relentless systemic blade of media intrusion ensured this deeply intimate photograph was immediately leaked, sparking outrage while simultaneously covering every major newspaper. The sudden drop leading to that casket was an excruciatingly public tragedy. The voice that once effortlessly dominated the world had been hollowed out by a toxic marriage, severe financial drain, and years of crippling substance use. By early 2012, her damaged lungs and weakened heart were silent predators. She was a woman trapped in an unfillable void, often sitting alone in dark rooms rewatching her past triumphs, completely severed from her former glory. When she drowned in the bathtub of room 434 at the Beverly Hilton Hotel just days prior, the raw agony of her accidental death, worsened by cocaine use and heart disease, felt less like a shock and more like the tragic conclusion of an invisible punishment. It confirmed the brutal reality that a hungry public demands perfection from its idols, yet fiercely consumes every single detail of their darkest, most desperate destruction. A lavish final display can temporarily obscure years of deep internal wreckage, but an equally haunting devastation occurs when a revolutionary mind collapses under the suffocating weight of sheer exhaustion, finding final solace not in a grand farewell, but scattered amongst dirty lyric sheets and half-empty pill bottles in a messy, overlooked apartment. Jimi Hendrix. The most terrifying silent predator isn't always a physical disease. Sometimes, it is the crippling psychological ghost of extreme fame. By 1970, the man who completely changed the way the world heard rock and blues was emotionally hollowed out. The systemic blade of the music industry, relentless contracts, vicious lawsuits, and a grueling touring schedule had become his invisible punishment. His mind was a chaotic mess, heavily reliant on sleeping pills and alcohol as a desperate survival strategy just to get some rest. In his final photograph on September 17, 1970, a vibrant Notting Hill garden provides a picture-perfect backdrop. He sits cradling his beloved Fender Stratocaster. But the golden illusion completely shatters when you examine his face. The electrifying sharpness he always showed on stage is entirely gone. His gaze is lowered and distant, his shoulders slumped under an unfillable void. The sudden drop occurred just hours later. Seeking an escape from the raw agony of sheer exhaustion, an excessive dose of sleeping pills rendered his body utterly defenseless. He choked in the early morning hours after vomiting, ending a legendary journey at just 27. Ultimately, his brilliant, electric soul had completely flatlined long before his exhausted physical body finally surrendered in the dark. A chemical surrender in a lonely apartment speaks to a desperate plea for rest, whereas a sudden biological ambush inside a sterile hospital room violently strips a fearsome street king of his indestructible armor in mere days. Easy. On March 26, 1995, the absolute finality of end-stage AIDS claimed the life of NWA's mastermind at just 30 years old, mere hours after a public confession shocked the nation. Rewinding just a few weeks prior, he was a dominant powerhouse ruling the rap industry with an untouchable, street-hardened image. But the sudden drop into reality was brutal. An invisible enemy had already breached his armor, turning a sudden fever into a terminal death sentence. His final photograph violently strips away the golden illusion, exposing him on a stark hospital bed. Covered in strange bruises, his face gaunt and eyes deeply sunken, he was trapped in raw agony as a severe lung infection forced heavy, broken gasps for air. In a flash, a titan of the concrete jungle was reduced to a frail, motionless patient. Fame offers no immunity against a biological ambush. The highest peaks cannot buffer the swiftness of total physical decay. That sudden crushing weight of a looming clinical collapse perfectly mirrors the desperate final months of a sovereign king, who ruthlessly pushed his pale, fragile frame to the absolute edge to stage one last global conquest. Michael Jackson. On June 24, 2009, he completely dominated the rehearsal stage for his highly anticipated This Is It comeback concert series, delivering incredibly precise, explosive dance moves under the dazzling stage lights, proving to the world that he remained the ultimate powerhouse icon. But this glorious peak was merely a desperate cover for a grand illusion shattered. Less than 24 hours later, the king of pop was dead. Inside his lonely mansion, fame's crushing pressure had exacted its final, most lethal price. To combat the crippling insomnia brought on by his grueling schedule, he had come to rely on a highly dangerous survival strategy: a toxic chemical cocktail of propofol and heavy sedatives. His final photograph, later unveiled to the public during a grim 2011 court trial, exposed the raw agony of his intensely private double life. There were no roaring crowds or forgiving spotlights left. His thin, motionless body lay completely still on a cold, sterile hospital gurney. With pale skin and eyes closed tight, he looked tragically shrunken, a frail, skeletal frame stripped entirely of the mythic aura that had captivated millions for decades. His sudden drop left behind an unfillable void, a ruined kingdom, and an endless labyrinth of unanswered questions and chilling speculation. What is the true value of conquering the entire world with your art when you cannot even purchase a single hour of natural, peaceful sleep? That haunting, silent flatline of a global pop empire seamlessly mirrors the quiet, regal departure of a sovereign soul whose magnificent final resting arrangement would soon leave the world entirely speechless. Aretha Franklin. Standing with us inside the museum, the air feels heavy with collective grief as we slowly shuffle past an open gold casket. The forgiving spotlight shines down on a final, breathtaking sight. The Queen of Soul rests in a striking red lace dress, her legs crossed neatly, wearing matching Christian Louboutin high heels. Surrounded by a dense sea of roses, she looks as if she is merely resting after a legendary performance. But my eyes well with tears because this regal display completely masks the raw agony of her final years. Behind closed doors in her luxurious mansion, a silent predator, pancreatic cancer, had been ruthlessly consuming her from the inside out. The invisible enemy inflicted constant, sharp pain, causing her body to go wasting away as she struggled to eat or drink. By the time she drew her last breath in her bedroom on August 16, 2018, the golden illusion of her indestructible power had fully dissolved into the quiet night. As the museum doors close, the grand, final chords of an ultimate matriarch symphony vanish into absolute darkness, leaving an empty, silent stage that a towering basketball titan would soon illuminate with a completely different kind of fierce, unyielding devotion. Kobe Bryant. A single routine decision can quietly transform into a merciless foe. To bypass grueling traffic and protect his family time, the global basketball icon adopted a simple survival strategy: traveling by private helicopter. On January 25, 2020, a final photo captured him standing calmly by a court, his eyes focused on his daughter Gianna. It was a picture-perfect family moment, far from dazzling stage lights. But the fateful choice to board that aircraft the next morning into thick fog triggered a catastrophic sudden drop. The helicopter crashed into a Calabasas hillside, leaving no survivors and plunging the world into an unfillable void of chilling speculation. Human existence remains terrifyingly fragile, a sudden shock mirroring the deceptive peace of a neon-lit sidewalk where another quiet star stood unaware of impending violence. Takeoff. The heavy diamond chains resting against his dark jacket stood as silent witnesses to the final, peaceful moments of a hip-hop powerhouse icon. They felt the steady heartbeat of a man who had stepped away from the noise into a quiet life. As his eyes looked down at his phone, the glittering links reflected a golden illusion of absolute safety. But that illusion shattered instantly. When a heated argument erupted nearby, a dispute he had no part in, the chains began to tremble. Sharp gunshots tore through the air, triggering a sudden drop as his body collapsed onto the concrete, hit in the head and chest. The cold metal links lay motionless under the yellow streetlights, glistening perfectly while his soul left an unfillable void. Fame's glittering treasures are powerless against an invisible punishment on the streets, a reckless violence that would soon trap another iconic titan inside a luxury vehicle caught in an unforgiving crossfire. Tupac Shakur. Look beneath the shiny shell of Las Vegas in 1996, and you find a mind consumed by a silent predator, the paranoia of being constantly watched. Tupac was a powerhouse icon, yet he lived trapped behind the invisible walls of a toxic rap war. On September 7th, his final photograph captured a deceptive golden illusion. A slight smile, a gold chain gleaming under neon lights. He looked invincible. But the sudden drop took only 15 minutes. At a red light, another vehicle pulled up and unleashed a brutal barrage of gunshots. Hit 4 times, his body slumped as the illusion shattered. He endured the raw agony for 6 days before passing at age 25, leaving an unfillable void and endless chilling speculation. Fame's crushing pressure had hunted his mind long before his blood stained the seat. This violent ambush in a luxury vehicle echoes the cold reality of the streets, where a warm, genuine smile outside a neighborhood shop would provide no shield against an approaching executioner. Nipsey Hussle. I stood on the warm Crenshaw asphalt that afternoon, watching him lean in for a photo with a little girl. You could feel the genuine warmth radiating from him. No flashy superstar pretense, just a community hero in a simple white t-shirt. His peaceful smile gave us a picture-perfect glimpse of hope. But the sudden drop struck instantly. An old acquaintance approached and sharp gunshots shattered the calm. The raw agony swept over the neighborhood as he collapsed on the sidewalk outside the marathon store he built from nothing. It felt like an invisible punishment for staying loyal to his roots. In seconds, the brightest light in the community was permanently extinguished, leaving an absolute blackout. That violent end on a hot concrete sidewalk shifts into the isolated hum of a narrow jungle road, where another creative soul sought a desperate escape from fame's crushing pressure. Lisa Left Eye Lopez. The glass of the video camera lens captured everything in sharp, agonizing clarity. It watched the creative soul of TLC smiling, her eyes sparkling as a familiar rhythm played inside the car along a quiet road in Honduras. It seemed a picture-perfect escape from years of turmoil. 4 days, it had recorded her healing journey, living in a wooden house near the river and writing in her journal. But then the lens witnessed a sudden drop into terror. Her eyes widened, tires screeched, and she gripped the wheel tightly as the vehicle swerved violently. With a horrific crash straight into a tree, all joy and hope ended in seconds as she died on the spot. The camera rolled into the dirt, frozen in silence, holding the final extracted frame of her journey. That profound silence left by an unexpected crash fades into the digital noise of an online post, where a young rap prodigy's flashy display inadvertently maps his own execution. Pop Smoke. One tiny oversight can instantly invite a silent predator. On February 18, 2020, the rising powerhouse of Brooklyn drill flashed a thick stack of cash inside a luxury vehicle, projecting a picture-perfect lifestyle of sudden wealth. It seemed like the ultimate golden illusion. But hidden inside that glamorous post lay an earth-shattering secret, a designer gift bag clearly displaying the address of his Hollywood Hills mansion. That single, careless upload became a beacon for a merciless foe. The very next night, armed men breached his sanctuary. In a brutal sudden drop, gunshots shattered the quiet, leaving him dead in the place he felt safest. His brilliant trajectory was violently cut short, proving how fragile fame's shield truly is. This fatal digital oversight transitions into the euphoric atmosphere of a private jet, where another young emo rap icon laughed loudly, completely unaware of the chemical clock ticking away inside his veins. Juice WRLD. An invisible enemy often hijacks the mind long before the physical body completely surrenders. On December 8, 2019, the ultimate golden illusion of a young emo rap icon at his absolute peak glided through the night sky on a private jet. Inside the cabin, loud music blared, friends gathered, and a camera captured him laughing loudly and joking with the luggage. He seemed relaxed, yet his eyes were strangely glazed, an ominous sign that his mind and body were no longer on the same path. This psychological detachment masked a heavy battle with substance reliance, a dangerous survival strategy for dealing with fame's crushing pressure. The catastrophic sudden drop struck as the aircraft prepared to land at Midway Airport. In an instant, the euphoric atmosphere turned chaotic as severe seizures gripped his body. Rushed for medical help, it was already too late. His journey ended at just 21 years old. That chaotic, mid-air surrender to a chemical storm dissolves into the quiet stillness of a parked vehicle, where an aging, battle-weary hip-hop titan nods his head to a slow, fading rhythm. DMX. Look at the weathered hand resting loosely on the steering wheel on March 29, 2021. The deep shadows beneath his sunken cheekbones expose an unfillable void. This hip-hop icon was nodding to the beat, a desperate survival strategy to mask his wasting away body. He spent his final days reading the Bible in upstate New York, but the peace was a fleeting golden illusion. An invisible enemy had already worn his biology down. The sudden drop was brutal. A heart attack struck on April 2nd, and by April 9, 2021, his breathing stopped completely. The forensic truth of this frame is absolute. Fame's crushing pressure destroys the soul long before the heart finally quits. The fading hum of a parked car dissolves into the blistering Florida sun, where a young SoundCloud rebel's luxury ride becomes a sudden, inescapable cage. XXXTentacion. Look at the glass windshield of the BMW i8, reflecting the harsh Florida sun on June 18, 2018. Inside sat Yase, a SoundCloud powerhouse icon who had shaken an entire generation with raw, intense music. He had sought peace away from the dazzling stage lights, spending his recent days at home drawing, listening to music, and trying to escape his past. But his quiet survival strategy was shattered in broad daylight. Two armed men approached the vehicle and opened fire. In an instant, the luxury car transformed into a metallic cage as his body slumped over the driver's seat. A shaky video frame leaked online at lightning speed, exposing a horrific illusion shattered. A young visionary completely motionless, head tilted back, mouth slightly open and eyes entirely empty of life. The finality of the concrete jungle always reclaims its kings without warning, leaving a trail of grief that forces us to look past the glamour to see the crushing cost of the spotlight.